Remind Americans who we are, what we stand for, and he ain't it. J.D. Vance ain't it. Cat ladies, come on, seriously? This is what we're going to go with, Republicans? So there's a lot of energy here that's been stoked. The money is great. The organization has to come, but the messaging and the conversation with the American people about who we are and how Kamala Harris represents the best of us, that's the next phase of this I'm going to be watching for.
All right, Michael Steele, great points. And thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And we're going to be watching The Weekend Saturdays and Sundays starting at 8 a.m. here on MSNBC. Really appreciate it, Michael.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks. Donnie Deutsch, Shalom Leader, thank you guys so much for being with us. Greatly appreciate it.
I cannot believe you did not mock my seersucker.
Well, I did off air.
Well, on air, though. I mean,
okay, well, yeah. Can you pull that off?
No.
Like, I grew up wearing seersucker, but I didn't have all these, like, bracelets. You got, like, 30 bracelets. And, well, you know, if you're going to wear seersucker, you got to go all in,
well,
right?
Just take the bracelets off and put, basically white bucks on.
Well, yeah, white bucks. And the tie, I mean, it's a little too silky and all. You just
go like a nice club tie?
Yeah, rep tie.
Yeah, rep tie.
Yeah, rep tie.
All right, we'll work on our offset.
Can I, you don't mind afterwards?
Come over to my closet.
Quick tips. Exactly. No, I will not. But you know what? I will send you some pictures from Ralph.
J. Crew.
From Ralph Lauren.
J. Press.
I know a guy at Ralph Lauren.
You got a guy?
I got a guy. Right. I'll send you some pictures. Okay.
Thank you, my brother.
No, I great respect to the seersucker. Exactly. So.
Just wait till everyone starts talking about what Kamala's wearing. I'm just saying. It's gonna come.
Okay.
It's gonna come.
Well,
that's what happens when ladies do politics.
Well, and when Donnie comes on the show, we talk about what he wears too, but for good reason. For good reason. All right. After all of that, take a deep breath. The third hour of Morning Joe starts right now.
Our campaign has always been about two different versions of what we see as the future of our country. Two different visions for the future of our country. One focused on the future, the other focused on the past. Donald Trump wants to take our country backward to a time before many of our fellow Americans had full freedoms and rights. But we believe in a brighter future that makes room for all Americans. We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead.
Vice President Kamala Harris making her first visit to campaign headquarters after taking over the Democratic presidential campaign. We're going to have more of her comments, the latest on the shattering fundraising records and the coalescing of support around her nomination. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Tuesday, July 23rd. With us, we have the host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau Chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire, MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC News, Katty Kay, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post, Eugene Robinson, former Treasury official and Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner, and member of the New York Times editorial board, Mara Gay. And Joe, she's not the official nominee, but as it pertains to the campaign, it certainly is go time.
It is go time. Look at the headlines here. Starting a 15-week dash, Harris presses case. 15-week dash. I mean, this is like, I must feel like I'm in London at the beginning of a British election. This is the way we should do it. I'm serious. I've always thought it's just insane that people run for 4 years. I mean, this is great.
Yeah.
But let's. I want to start with Steve Ratner really quickly because Steve's like really rich, and he coughs and like $1 million just comes out.
Yeah.
So he gets numbers and. For a poor country lawyer like me, Steve, this is kind of hard to put my arms around just how much money the vice president has brought in over the past 24, 36 hours. Talk about it.
It's extraordinary, Joe. I don't think we've seen anything quite like this. She's raised well over $80 million, perhaps as much as $100 million. And these are almost entirely small donors going online to the ActBlue website and sending in $10, $25. I think she had something like 880,000 donors contributing to her campaign during this period. It really reflects the upsurge in excitement and belief that the Democrats have a candidate now who can hopefully win.
Well, you know, and Mara, what's so interesting is when I talk to people that aren't in this business and don't talk about this incessantly 24 hours a day, nobody's saying she's FDR or Ronald Reagan or Barack Obama as far as political talents go.
Right.
They understand that, and at the same time, they're so excited. They don't expect that. They're just so excited. They're so energized. It's historic. It's also, many people believe, all that's standing between the United States and a very, very dark place for this country.
You know, I was out of town for a few days, and I came home yesterday to Brooklyn, and just walking through the streets, every other conversation on the street was, who should be her running mate? Right. What do you think? People are throwing out names. The excitement that you hear from, I'm going to assume that most of my neighbors in Brooklyn are Democratic voters.
Really?
It's shocking in the bubble in which we live. But no, the excitement is palpable. And I think it is we'll see, because you have to win the thing. But I do think in the past, month, I've really, part of the concern with the President Biden was, I think this election might come down to big mo, to momentum, to excitement.
Right.
And it's going to be really close, and that can really make the difference. So I think the party is already seeing that excitement, and they haven't even had their convention yet. So it seems like this was the right decision. I mean, the donors certainly feel that way, and the fact that there's small donations suggests it's not just the big donors, but it's the party voters.
Well, and that's what I'm hearing, Jonathan, again, for people who aren't really politically engaged. They all go, what do you think about this? I'm getting texts from people I haven't talked to in a while. And they said, I've already given my contribution. I don't know if it's $15 or $25, but there is a real excitement, a real energy.
Yeah, it is a 180 for Democrats. The race has completely changed. And I think what we've seen of the fundraising numbers here in the last 24, 36 hours is that there was an untapped hunger for Democrats to get involved in this race, and they just simply weren't there with President Biden. They may have liked him. They may have voted for him in 2020. They respected the job he did as president, think he was a good president, but they just didn't think he was up for being a candidate now. They didn't think he was up for beating Donald Trump. And a fresh face here is being rewarded. And now we've already seen her, appear to debut some attack lines, which we'll get into, that communicated in a way that at least recently President Biden was not able to. She's going to hit the road today, heading to Milwaukee, heading to Wisconsin, arguably the top battleground state in the nation. And Democrats are fired up. They are ready to contribute, not just with their dollars, but their time. The campaign tens of thousands of people volunteering in the last 24 to 36 hours, too. Yeah. It has completely changed the feeling around this race.
Well, and Mike, speaking of completely changing, the way Democrats are looking at Joe Biden right now, you've heard one after another actually feeling free to say, he's been a great president for us. This was a great man making, this decision. And the contrast between Democrats say between Joe Biden and what he did and Donald Trump, putting country over self, is a stark contrast that I suspect we'll see play out throughout history. As far as looking back at this time, the contrast is going to be pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it already is, and it's been magnified over the past 24, 48 hours. The interesting thing to me is you just used the phrase politically engaged people. Early yesterday morning, I'm getting the newspapers, buying the newspapers at this variety store that I get my newspapers at. And the woman put the papers together, the Times, the New York Post, the Boston Globe, and everything like that, and put them on the counter for me, and looked at the paper, the headline on the Times yesterday, and looked up at me and said, oh, he withdrew? You know, a lot
Right.
of people aren't as politically engaged,
Right.
obviously, as we are.
Right.
And yet, on the other side of the coin, my wife, because she's my wife and what she does for a living is different than what I do for a living, she was talking to Rufus Gifford, who was one of the president's chief fundraisers, President Biden's chief fundraisers, and now Vice President Harris's chief fundraisers. And he was telling her that he thought by the end of the day today, they would have hit the $100 million mark in terms of contributions thrown over the rail in 48 hours. That is astounding.
Yeah, that really is. And Gene, you've said that Joe Biden has done his part in your column today. Now, what's the next step?
Well, the next step, I wrote that column on Sunday saying the next step is for the Democratic Party to coalesce. I believed the thing to do was to coalesce around Vice President Harris as the presidential candidate. That has happened already. She's already, by most counts, surpassed the number of delegates now who've come out and said they're going to vote for her, the number that she needs to become the nominee. So she is the presumptive nominee. And what are Democrats doing? I mean, they are voting with their dollars, they're voting with their feet. There is an excitement and enthusiasm and optimism, a feeling for the first time in many months that this is not only a winnable race, but that they can really slam Donald Trump in this election coming up. You saw Vice President Harris yesterday going to campaign headquarters. In many ways, the most important political speech she's given, because it was her introduction to the nation as the Democratic presidential candidate. And I just thought, just objectively, standing back, I thought she knocked it out of the park. I mean, I thought she was forceful, she was funny, she was eloquent, she paid homage and tribute to Joe Biden, who called in and sounded happy. Biden sounded pleased with the way this was all playing out. I know that he's a good politician. He can sound like that, and maybe his deep feelings were otherwise. But he seemed better and better with the decision that he had made. And I thought Harris showed the prosecutorial skill that she's going to show again and again in the campaign. And I just imagined Donald Trump and his brain trust watching that and just saying, "Oy, what are we going to do?
Yes.
This is a different race." Sunday night there was a phone call with 40,000 black women getting together to support Kamala Harris. Last night there was a similar phone call with 20,000 black men. She's going to have foot soldiers. She's going to have enthusiasm. This is a new ballgame.
Yeah, and it's historic on so many levels, Gene, as you mentioned. I remember when the vice president spoke at my San Francisco Know Your Value event, and she talked about breaking barriers, and she's well aware of how hard it is, that it is painful, it is difficult, and she actually was talking about considering running for president back then, and talked about the risks, talked about the criticism she would get, talking about how breaking barriers is painful, and then you get stronger. And